There has been a surge in HTML smuggling phishing attacks.
So, Chris, I understand you've got a story about some phishing attacks that are leveraging HTML5 to hide the malicious payloads.
Yes, so Microsoft has seen a surge in malware campaigns using HTML smuggling to distribute banking Trojans and remote access Trojans. So HTML smuggling is a technique used in phishing campaigns that use HTML5 and JavaScript to hide malicious payloads in encoded strings in HTML attachments or web pages. And when a user clicks on this, these strings are decoded by the browser, and then the user opens the attachment and it downloads to their device. And the scary part about this attack is that they can actually hide their payload in a legitimate link. So the link could be 100% legitimate, could be like a common Dropbox link or anything like that. And the JavaScript in the background will then download this payload. And the payload they're encoding it and encrypting it, so it's a little bit harder for endpoint security systems to detect them and other antivirus software. And they've seen a lot of this being used in very common attacks to deploy ransomware. There's also been the async remote access Trojan and the NJRAT, the New Jersey Rat remote access Trojan, or the TrickBot Trojan used to breach networks. So, and they're mostly deploying this through phishing email campaigns. It's probably one of the most common techniques adversaries try to deliver a payload onto an endpoint. And with the growing the IoT environment, this is becoming much more difficult. But they do have Microsoft do have some recommendations to help prevent HTML smuggling. One is being careful about zip files, looking at password protecting files, because the adversaries in this case are actually putting passwords on their zip files, so it would block a common endpoint detection, wouldn't be able to look into it because of the password. But if the user puts in the password, then it will download it onto their machine. And the password would be like in the email probably, and someone just unknowingly just clicked on the link, download the file, and then entered the password that was provided to them. And other recommendations is to check for base64 encoding, because if it's a legitimate script, it probably doesn't have to be base64 encoded. And from the endpoint side, Microsoft recommends to block any JavaScript or VB script from launching or downloading on your machines, block any obfuscated scripts that are encoded or encrypted, and block executables unless they meet a certain age requirement. So if the age is only 3 seconds old, it might be something malicious. So the adversaries are getting a little more intelligent with this. They're encoding it. They're adding passwords to try to evade all these high intelligent security endpoints.
Yeah, when you first mentioned the word smuggling in the context of HTML, I thought you were talking about HTTP request smuggling, which is something very different. But this is interesting. I'm reading through the Microsoft write-up here, and there's some cool things that they're doing in order to make these links within the HTML files seem more legitimate, and definitely the encoding of a payload. I'm trying to think of any time that I've actually seen an HTML extension on an attachment that was legitimate. Like, HTML files don't seem to be, at least in my experience, all that often legitimate stuff. Have you guys ever seen? And I might be wrong. It just might be that I've spent more time looking at phishing samples than I have actual email from actual real people. But who knows?
Well, that's one of the risks of being in our business, is that we tend to be more paranoid about those kinds of things. But sure, you're right. I don't regularly see legitimate HTML attachments. I do like one of the other recommendations, though, that associating .js and .jse files with a text editor, so that the JavaScript won't automatically be executed by VB script or MSHTA or whatever on the system. But again, that's relying on the user, though, to set that up. And again, these attacks are phishing attacks in general are all relying on the user falling for something and, clicking on something that they shouldn't. In this case, also typing in a password that was included in the email.
There's a lot of hurdles to get through to get the user to do this. I mean, if they're going to fall for it, they're going to fall for it, but it doesn't exactly seem quite so easy, I guess, or there's some extra work that you have to convince the user to take besides just opening something, right?
One of the recommendations too was to enable extensions on Windows File Explorer, because default they kind of hide the file extension. But I don't know anyone else, unless they're in like cybersecurity or computer science, that actually enables the extensions on their Windows Explorer.
I do that.
I do it on every Windows system I use. But then I've been doing this for too long, so.
Well, here's a question though, like how many file extensions do you think the average non-technical user will actually recognize? I would hazard to say it's a fairly small number. Like they probably know what an exe is, a PDF, some of the image formats. I don't know for sure that they would know what to do with a .js or a .jse. Also, the number of times that Windows has tried to open up a .js file for me when I was just trying to edit it like a text file is incredibly frustrating. I don't think most users need to run JavaScript on their desktop either. To me, that sounds like a no-brainer, like a setting that Windows should have set to edit like a text file, not run a JavaScript. But I mean, it seems.
I absolutely agree with you there, and I wonder if that's something that could be set with group policy.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, probably.